episode is build up that clear coat finish to the point where I can begin wet sanding it without fear of sanding through and removing any of the color. So what I'll do is I'll apply the finish, I'll let it dry, usually about 5 to 6 hours, and then I'll apply more coats after each 5 to 6 hour period. So I can generally get usually 3, sometimes 4 coats in a day. And I'll spend 2 or 3 days applying this finish until I've built up that thickness. Technique is just the same as it was when I applied the seal coats. All I need to do is rub it on like so, and all we're doing is trying to completely saturate the surface with the mineral spirits and polyurethane. If you look closely, you can see all the dust and lint that has settled into the polyurethane and dried to the surface. And even though that looks really bad, it's not that big a deal, because once I'm finished building up my coats of polyurethane, I'm going to go back in and level sand it down so that it's nice and smooth. And during the last 3 days, I've been applying coat after coat of my polyurethane and mineral spirits blend to the body of the guitar, and now I'm at the point where I'm ready to begin smoothing out the surface by level sanding it. Okay, so the sandpaper that I'm using to do this is 3M's 216U open coat free cut sandpaper, and I'm using right now I'm using a P400 wrapped around a pink eraser. And I'll completely sand the entire surface of the guitar using this sandpaper. And then when I'm done, I'm going to wipe it down with a thin coat of my thinned out polyurethane and mineral spirits. I'll let that dry. And then I may, in a few hours, add a second coat just to build it up a little bit. I'll let them dry, and then I'm going to go back in and do the same thing, but with 800 grit. And I'll get it sanded, and then I'll apply a couple more coats of the polyurethane after that, and then let those dry, and then we'll come back and I'll use the wet dry sandpaper, and I'll probably use mineral spirits as a lubricant, and I'll sand the entire surface again. So now, one of the inevitable realities of this type of finish is unfortunately sand through, but it's fairly easy to fix. What I do is I use a little Japan dryer and then the same oil paints that I use to color tint the surface. And all I do is apply the Japan dryer so that it kind of soaks into that area. And that looks to be about the extent of it. I don't see any more. And then take the oil paint, just take a little bit. You can use your finger like I'm doing here to kind of blend it. Now, of course, this means I'm going to have to let it sit overnight to dry, but that's okay. Well, at this point I have finished my dry sanding with 400 grit and 800 grit sandpaper. And then after each grit, I applied 2 coats of my 50-50 mix of mineral spirits and polyurethane. So now I'm ready to do the very final sanding session. And this will be a wet sanding session, which will be done using 3M's 401Q wet dry paper. And this is going to be a 1500 grit. And I'm going to continue using the 50-50 mix of mineral spirits and polyurethane as a sanding lubricant, and that'll also give a really super smooth finish to the surface. So we'll get started with that. Now I found the best way to wet sand the guitar body is to do it the top and let it dry, and then do the sides and let that dry, and then do the back and let it dry. In other words, each section is done separately. It's just easier to handle the guitar that way. So what I'll do is I'll take a clean cloth and I'm going to apply enough of the polyurethane and mineral spirits to thoroughly wet the surface. And then I take my wet dry sandpaper and I just lightly sand the surface. You don't have to put a lot of pressure here. And you want to be careful not to linger over an area for too long and risk the potential of sanding through the tinted color and into the wood below it. Okay, now I need to remove the excess, so I'm going to be using another clean, dry cloth to remove that. And we're just going to wipe it down and continue to wipe it until none of it remains. But in truth, there'll still be polyurethane and mineral spirits on the surface. It'll just be in such a thin coating. You won't notice it, but if you touch it, you'll leave a mark. So okay, so now I'm at the very last steps in this process. And what I need to do now is apply my 50-50 mix of mineral spirits and polyurethane consistently and evenly across the surface, and then I'm going to wipe it off. And you might think, well, why would you wipe it off? You want to leave some of it on there. Well, in truth, what we're doing is we're removing the excess and leaving just a very thin film. And I'll do probably 3 to 4 coats, and that's going to leave a surface that's very, very smooth with a nice sort of a satin semi-gloss sheen to it. So the way I do this is just like I've been doing with the previous applications, in that I just apply it and completely cover the surface in a consistent application. So then what we do next is we take a clean cloth and we just wipe off all the excess. And even though it seems like all of the polyurethane and mineral spirits have been removed, if you swipe your finger across the surface, it'll leave a mark, so you'll know that there is still a very thin film of the poly on there. And as you're wiping, you just want to do it very lightly towards the end, so that it doesn't leave a lot of rag marks. And the first couple of coats may not look like you've done much, but as you build up the coats, it begins to take on a consistently smooth surface. After each coat is applied, I'll let it dry for probably about 3 to 4 hours, and then I'll come back and apply another coat. So this is kind of what to expect as far as the sheen is concerned. And I know some of you are probably wondering, well, can I get a really glossy shine out of this? And the answer is yes, as long as you have, good buffing equipment or polishing equipment, you can easily buff this out to a very high gloss sheen, which I've actually done before. But for this one, I wanted just to get that nice natural satin sheen. All right, well, this is how the finish turned out. I'm pretty happy with it. It has a nice satin to semi-gloss sheen to it. And if I want to, I can take it to my buffer and buff it up to a high gloss shine. And who knows, maybe I'll do that. But at any rate, I'm pretty pleased with the results. And, even though it took 4 episodes to explain the technique, it really isn't very complicated. It's actually quite simple. And it's affordable. All the components, the artist oil, the polyurethane, the mineral spirits, all that is available at your local hardware store, your local arts and crafts store, and the prices are pretty affordable. So I highly recommend, if you're looking for an easy to do finish, one that's durable and doesn't require any special equipment like a spray gun and compressor, this is a route that you should really explore. And hopefully these videos will give you some ideas as to how it's done. And yeah, I highly recommend you give it a shot. So there you have it.